Dashrath Manjhi was born in a very small village called Gehlur in Bihar, India, a place where life was simple but full of struggle, and where poor families like his lived with hope but also with heavy pain. And from the beginning, Dashrath understood that the world was not kind to people like him because he came from a very low caste, and society did not give him equal respect, and his family did not have land or money, only dreams and a wish to survive. And little Dashrath spent most of his childhood walking barefoot on sharp stones, feeling hunger like a permanent shadow behind him, seeing his parents work in fields for very small wages, and every day he felt life was a fight that never stopped. But even then, something inside him stayed strong, a small fire that made him believe he must keep going no matter how hard the road was. And when he grew older, he left his village to work in the coal mines because he wanted to earn money for his family. But the mines were dangerous, dark, and full of suffering, and the air was so heavy that every breath felt like pain. Yet Dashrath did not complain because he believed work was the only way to change his destiny. And years later, he returned to his home village where he fell in love with a simple, kind-hearted girl named Falguni. And their love was not fancy like in movies, but deep and real. A love built on small moments, like sharing food, laughing under the sky, holding hands while walking on rough paths, and dreaming of a better life together. But in their village there was one huge problem, a giant mountain that separated Gehlur from the nearest town. And because of this mountain, people had to walk around it for hours just to reach hospital, school, or market. And it was not a small difficulty. It was a painful reality that took lives, dreams, and time. And for Dashrath and Falguni, this long walk became a daily routine, especially for collecting water, food, and medicines. And although they lived with joy, the mountain always stood like an enemy between them and the world. And one day, everything changed forever when Falguni was badly injured while crossing the rocky slope of that same mountain, and Dashrath ran to get help. But to reach the hospital, he had to walk 55 kilometers around the mountain, and every minute felt like a knife cutting his heart, and he kept praying that she would stay alive. But by the time he returned home with help, Falguni had already taken her last breath, and the moment Dashrath saw her lifeless body, his whole world broke apart. His heart felt like someone was hitting it again and again, and he cried like a child because the woman he loved, the reason he wanted a better life, was gone forever. And in that moment, he felt anger, sadness, and helplessness mixing inside him until one thought came like lightning. No one else should lose their loved ones because of this mountain. And as he looked at the huge rock that had stolen Falguni from him, he made a promise that seemed impossible for any ordinary man. He would break the mountain with his own hands. He would carve a road through it, and he would do it alone, without machines, without money, without support, only with simple tools and his unshakable will. And people in the village laughed at him, called him mad, told him he was wasting his life. But Dashrath did not care, because pain had turned into purpose, and he felt that breaking this mountain was the only way to keep Falguni alive inside his heart. So he picked up a hammer and a chisel and walked toward the mountain with quiet determination, while the sun burned his skin and dust filled his eyes. But his mind was clear and his promise was strong. And that is where the unbelievable journey of Dashrath Manjhi began. The journey of a man with no power, no education, no support, but a heart bigger than the mountain he wanted to break. And as he hit the first rock, dust rose in the air like a silent beginning of a legend the world would one day remember. When Dashrath Manjhi struck the first stone of the giant mountain, he did not know how long the journey would take. He only knew that every hit of his hammer was a message to the world that one man's love and pain could fight even the biggest obstacles. And every morning before the sun rose, he walked to the mountain with his small tools, a hammer, a chisel, and sometimes a little food, and he worked until his hands shook, his back burned, and sweat mixed with dust on his skin, and people watched him with confusion. Some laughed loudly, saying, "This man has lost his mind." Some pointed at him and said, "What can one poor man do to a mountain?" But Dashrath did not reply because he had no time for words. He had only time for work, and every strike of his tool echoed loudly in the empty valley, like a drum announcing the rise of a common man who refused to bow down. And days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and months slowly turned into years. And even when rain came like a storm and washed away the dust he had cleared, he continued. And when the summer sun felt like fire burning his body, he continued. And when cold winter winds cut his skin, he continued. And he ate whatever he could find, sometimes dry roti, sometimes just water. But his mind stayed fixed on the memory of Falguni, her smile, her laughter, her soft voice telling him that he could do anything if he stayed true to his heart. And that memory pushed him forward every day. And slowly, very slowly, the mountain began to change. A small crack appeared, then a small opening, then a narrow path that only one person could walk through. And though it was still far from a road, it was a sign that impossible things start small. Just like Dashrath's journey started with one hammer strike, and while many villagers mocked him, some started respecting him secretly because they saw that he was not giving up, not even one day, and even wild animals sometimes came near him, but he did not stop. He kept breaking stone after stone, and sometimes blood came from his hands, dripping on the rocks as if his body was sacrificing itself one drop at a time. And at night, when he went home tired, he slept on the floor with the hope that tomorrow he would break a little more of the mountain. And life continued like this for year after year, and on some days he felt completely alone, but then he remembered the pain of losing Falguni, and loneliness became his fuel, the mountain became his enemy, and his heart became stronger than the stones he broke. And after many years, around the 7th or 8th year of his work, the villagers who once insulted him began to bring him food, water, and sometimes extra tools, because they realized that this man was doing something not just for himself, but for everyone. And slowly the laughter turned into respect, and respect turned into belief, and a few villagers even started helping him for short periods. But Dashrath always told them, "This is my promise to Falguni, let me finish it." And so he continued mostly alone, with his shadow as his only partner, and the mountain kept falling piece by piece, and people passing nearby would pause to watch him, shocked by his determination. And news spread from one village to another about a man breaking a mountain with his bare hands, and some travelers stopped to shake his hand. But Dashrath never let praise slow him down, because he knew he still had far to go. And after nearly 10 to 15 years of non-stop work, the narrow path slowly became wider, big enough for 2 people, then big enough for animals. And then a point came when the mountain finally opened up like a door, revealing a long passage carved by one man's will. And by now, Dashrath had become thin, dark from the sun, his clothes always dusty, his body tired, but his spirit stronger than ever. And even though he had already worked more than a decade, he did not stop, because he wanted the road to be smooth, wide, and safe for everyone, especially for women, children, and sick people who should never again suffer the way Falguni had suffered. And so he kept shaping the rock walls, cleaning the path, making the ground even, spending day after day fighting the mountain like a warrior with no armor. And he worked like this until the passage became a real road, something people could use without fear, something that saved hours of walking, something that brought hope to thousands. And this road was not built with machines. not with government money, not with any team, but with the hands, heart, and unbreakable promise of one simple man named Dashrath Manjhi, who refused to let pain defeat him and turned it into history instead. And even after the road began to be used by people, Dashrath did not feel pride. He only felt peace because he knew Falguni would be smiling somewhere, watching him turn his heartbreak into a gift for the whole world. When the villagers finally walked on the road, Dashrath carved through the huge mountain. Many of them cried, many touched the stones with respect, because they knew this was not just a path, it was the story of a man's pain, love, and power. And Dashrath Manjhi, the man who once had nothing, now became a symbol of what a human heart can do when it refuses to give up. And people from nearby villages, towns, and even far places visited the road, calling it the Mountain Man Road. And everyone wanted to meet the man who broke a mountain with his bare hands. And Dashrath, with his simple clothes and calm eyes, would smile shyly because he never worked for fame. He only worked for his promise to Falguni. And after completing the road, he decided to go to the government to ask for help in developing his village, because he wanted schools, hospitals, and water supply for his people. And he walked all the way to Patna, the capital of Bihar, without shoes, carrying only his hope and his belief that the government would listen. But when he reached the offices, many officials ignored him. Some laughed at him. Some told him to come later, and some could not understand how one man could do something so big. But Dashrath kept walking to every office, every minister, saying the same line again and again. "I broke a mountain, now please help my village." And slowly, after many days of trying, the government finally understood that this man was not ordinary. He was a living legend, and they started supporting the road, improving it, making it wider, and recognizing his unbelievable effort. And Dashrath returned to his village with a small smile of victory, because now the world knew his story, and because now no one would ever call him crazy again. And children started taking inspiration from him, saying if Manjhi Ji can break a mountain, then we can break our problems too. And journalists, writers, filmmakers, and international visitors came to meet him, and they asked him questions like, "What kept you going?" And he always answered in simple words, "Love." And he said, "When you love someone truly, nothing is impossible." And his eyes would always become soft when he spoke about Falguni, because even after so many years, her memory lived inside him, like a gentle fire guiding his soul. And as he grew older, his body became weaker, but his spirit stayed strong, and he continued working for his village in small ways, helping people, giving advice, speaking about strength and courage. And even though he became famous, he always lived like a simple man, eating simple food, wearing simple clothes, never demanding anything, because he believed his real reward was the road and the change it brought. And in 2007, when Dashrath became seriously ill with cancer, the government took him to AIM's hospital in Delhi for treatment, and doctors tried their best. But the disease had already spread too far, and the man who fought a mountain for 22 long years now faced a battle his body could not win. Yet even in his last days, he spoke softly, telling nurses and visitors that people should not fear struggle, because struggle makes a person shine from inside. And on 17 August 2007, Dashrath Manjhi left the world, leaving behind not just a road, but a message for all humanity. A message that even the poorest, smallest, and simplest person can do something so big that the world will never forget. And the day he died, his entire village cried. People stood silently on the road he had built, touching the walls, remembering his journey, his love, his strength, and the government honored him with a state funeral, something almost no poor man ever receives. And newspapers around the world wrote about him, calling him the Mountain Man. And even today, long after he is gone, His story continues to move hearts, inspire dreamers, and give courage to anyone who feels weak or hopeless, because Dashrath proved that one man with no money, no power, no education, but a heart full of love can change an entire world, and his road still stands in Gelaur, shining like a reminder that mountains are not always made of rock. Sometimes mountains are made of fear, pain, and doubt. And when a person decides to break them with courage, even the impossible becomes possible. And that is why the story of Dashrath Manjhi is not just a story of one man. It is a story of human strength, a story the whole world needs, and a story that will continue to inspire generations forever.